SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Will East in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Will.
Morning, Gerard.
What's happening?
Have you seen the snow falling from the skies?
No, what's up?
It's not snow.
Okay.
I was sitting outside yesterday out in the back patio, and I noticed this white. I thought it was ash. I thought somebody might have been burning something.
Yeah.
And it come down upon me. And then I was like, I put my hand up and it accumulated in my hand. And it was little bugs.
Huh?
Mississippi has an infestation of what they call woolly aphids. And it looks like snow coming down. And I noticed it the other day, and again, I just kind of thought, oh, somebody's burning something. I don't smell it, but somebody's burning something. It must be ash. But yesterday at my house in particular, it looked like it was snowing almost. That's the only way I can describe it. They're white, little fuzzy bugs, and you've probably noticed them at your house.
I have.
But I couldn't figure out what it was, and so I sat down and I looked it up, and sure enough, that's what it was. In Mississippi right now, for some reason, we have an infestation of them.
The infestation of the aphids. So,
and Mississippi State Extension Service, shout out to them. I guess we were on the same wavelength mentally because they also, as soon as I saw that, of course, my phone pops up an article that the Mississippi State Extension Service wrote about it, saying, no, you're not going crazy. It's not snowing in September in Mississippi. It's a bug infestation of all things.
Unbelievable. Well, if it's not the locust, I guess it's the aphids, right?
They're called woolly aphids, and they're white. It's very weird. I've never noticed it before.
Man. How long is this expected to endure?
I don't know. Probably not that long. And apparently they don't cause any problems.
Okay.
It's just something that is falling from the sky.
Yeah. Wow. You know what else is falling from the sky? And that's Jimmy Kimmel back on the air.
Back on the air.
It's another one of those Linda Blair moments. Your head's spinning around so fast. Disney, ABC, you're on, you're off, returning to the air this week. However, I believe I saw that the big affiliate, is it Sinclair, said we're still not going to carry it?
Sinclair Broadcasting, which owns about 40 ABC affiliates across the nation. Some are in small areas, but some are in large areas. For example, Portland, Seattle.
Big markets.
They have several in Texas, North Carolina, I believe Asheville, North Carolina. So they've got some small markets, medium markets, but they also have some large markets, and they say that they're not going to air Jimmy's show until Jimmy apologizes.
Yeah, their official statement, Sinclair's official statement, said they would not air the show until it is, quote, confident that appropriate steps have been taken to uphold the standards expected of a national broadcast platform, end quote. Man, that's very vague and very nonspecific. I don't know exactly what that would entail, whatever those standards are, but apparently they got to see whatever that is before they restore airing.
I personally think that they're looking for an apology.
It could be.
And now I'm going to tell you, I've already seen the guest lineup.
Yeah.
I don't think if he's going to apologize, I don't think it's going to happen, or it's going to be very nonchalant.
Yeah.
And the other guy that is in kind of a similar situation, Stephen Colbert, he's decided he's just going all out. Every show from here on out is just going to be a Democrat of some sort. He's got on, I know Gavin Newsom's coming on his show, Senator, whose name escapes me, the Connecticut Senator.
Connecticut Senator.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Democrat.
All right.
Who was saying that we were in a war the day before Charlie Kirk got shot, and then said we need to tone down the rhetoric.
Blumenthal?
No, not Blumenthal.
The other one's Murphy from Connecticut.
Yeah, Chris Murphy.
It was Chris Murphy who said it. Yeah,
he's going to be on. So they're not going. Look, I think the ABC just kind of freaked out when he said that, and they have obviously a contentious relationship with President Trump, and I think they freaked out, and they took him off the air after he – and look, what he said was a lie.
Yeah.
That's – it comes down to that. What he said was not truthful, and the FCC chair called him out on it, and I think they freaked out, and that's why they took him off the air, and then they got some pushback on it, big time, and so that's why they're reinstating him. Disney's between a rock and a hard place on this, I believe.
They totally are. It wouldn't surprise me that he gets back on the air, and then the ratings are terrible.
Well, they'll be good for the one night. I think that'll happen. I think everybody will tune in to see what he has to say.
Oh, probably so. Yeah,
for tonight.
It'll be of huge interest. It'll be a spectacle. But then it'll calm down in 3-4 months. They'll terminate him because the ratings are terrible, and it's just an economic loser for the company. That's my prediction at this point. I just don't see how it's sustainable given how low the ratings were and just again the financial performance of the show. Paying him $16 million a year to host a show just wasn't working out. Those numbers weren't jiving. So we'll see what happens. It's one thing we know is that the country is deeply divided. It's polarized. There's no way to appease everyone in this situation. Just pick one, honestly. They would probably have a better chance of producing a show that had an expanded, larger audience if they just stay out of trying to advance their political agenda. And in this case, their deep contempt and disdain for one person, the president. I just don't think that that's a winner from an entertainment perspective.
Here's the Late Show with Stephen Colbert on CBS. Last night they had on Scarlett Johansson and Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat from Arizona.
Yep.
Tonight they're going to have on Governor Gavin Newsom and Priscilla Presley. Wednesday, Senator Chris Murphy and Lainey Wilson. Well, Thursday show, Jeremy Strong and Kerry Preston. So no politicians on one show out of the week. I don't think he does a show on Fridays, a live show.
It's not supposed to be a show that's just focused on political content with political guests. I don't think that's why people tune in. I
think they have just drunk so much Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
That they don't – and where they are, New York and L.A., I mean, I just think they've drunk the Kool-Aid so much that they believe these things.
It could be. Well, I don't think that it bodes well for the future, honestly, of the show. I think you're right. There'll be a lot of folks that just want to tune in. Maybe will hang it on their seat to your point of, is he going to apologize? And if he doesn't, and doesn't really show any remorse, they just don't tune in again.
And apparently that's initially what happened. When I say they freaked out, initially they said, okay, you got to apologize. And he said, I don't really want to apologize. I want to go a little bit deeper into it. And that's when they were like, whoa.
Yeah, the old doubling down.
Yeah, the doubling down.
Yeah, I don't think that that was wise on their part. But, man, oh, man, it's a whirlwind back and forth. Who would have thunk in less than a week, right, from being canceled, he's back? I didn't see that coming. I don't know that most people did.
I think they got a lot of pressure from higher. I mean, I heard politicians and everybody. And by the way, I guess the dictatorship of Donald Trump is over, because apparently we were living under dictatorship while he was suspended. Now that he's not suspended, he's back on the air. Is the dictatorship over with, Gerard?
And I don't know about. I get a little concerned when the FCC gets involved and says, hey, you can't say that, you're lying, because, my gosh, they would have a full plate of monitoring all the lying across the airwaves. A lot of times, folks lie and don't know it. So, I don't know. That's a concern as well. I don't know that the FCC putting their finger on this issue was even necessary, honestly. It was just a bad show with bad ratings. End of story, in my view. We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio, it's Christopher Green. He's going to come on at 10:35 and break down this whole issue of free speech from a constitutional perspective. Stay with us. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
We're rolling. Middays with Gerard Gibert. What?
This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk Mississippi.
A tyrant. We used to compare the strength of our democracy to communist dictators. That's what we're dealing with right now in Donald Trump. And
communist dictator.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, jeez. Somebody, I guess, has told them that they should use that language, that they've tested it, maybe.
Well, okay, fascist dictator, all right. Communist dictator, Kamala? That was Kamala last night on Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. She called Donald Trump a communist dictator. I'm no political expert, but communist
dictator is a bit of a stretch there, Kamala. Oh, my gosh. Of course, as we talked about yesterday, you've got a sitting member of the United States House, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Sandy from Westchester, as Tucker used to call her, who said on the House floor that, oh, yeah, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 granted black people the right to vote in this country, which is categorically false. How can one be a member of the Congress and not know that little important piece of history? I just don't get it. But that's where we are, certainly in this country, and it's disappointing that we have people in public service at such a high level that are so dang clueless.
Can I play you what she said about the election?
Yeah, please.
Let's see. Here we go.
we had a president of the United States running for re-election, 3.5 months from the election, decides not to run. The sitting vice president enters the race against a former president of the United States who's been running for 10 years with 107 days to go. And it ended up being the closest presidential election in the 21st century.
That's not true.
Well, based on what now? On the popular vote?
Popular vote?
No, it is.
On popular vote?
Yeah. It's 2 million.
I thought Bush, Al Gore was closer.
I don't think that was the 21st century. And actually, that came down to an electoral vote issue in Florida. So check that out. I know that because I recall almost the numbers from the top of my head. 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, 2024. I can almost recite those outcomes. Total popular vote.
It was November 7th, 2000.
Right.
So that's 21st century.
Okay.
And the difference was...
popular vote, it was less than 1 million.
Yeah, it was about 400,000.
Okay. So if we put that in the 21st century, you're right. That would be considered the smallest margin. Of course, remember that came down to the hanging chads in Florida.
The hanging chads.
On the
Who could
electoral
forget about the
vote.
hanging chads?
So, I just pulled it up. I thought it was around 1 million. You're right. It's about 400,000 was the difference on the popular vote between Bush and Al Gore. The others, though, since then, she's right in that, the smallest margin of all the races since 2000 was in fact the 2024 election. But, she didn't consider this one, and so she'd be wrong about that. How about the second closest is what it would amount to? November 7th, 2000, you are correct.
And in terms of electoral votes, I wonder what the difference was.
In which one?
In hers.
Oh, wasn't close. I mean, Trump won all the swing states, and so the electoral vote was really tilted way far in his favor. Wasn't like a couple others that were close. So, she's wrong about that. I don't know. It feels like that a lot of these folks that are elected into public office don't fact check a lot of the stuff they say and just say it without really considering that it may be inaccurate. But people like that have a bunch of research resources at their disposal. You would think would check stuff out like that and make sure that the person they work for is informed before they start making statements.
She's on a media tour right now to promote her book. And she is going to be, you're going to see more clips of her from different, I know she was on a podcast this morning. You're going to start seeing more news from her.
Yeah. I think you're right. I don't know what that means to her political future. I also think, check me out on this, Will, I think the 21st century doesn't start till 2001. I think 2000 is the end of the 20th century. December 31st, 2000, the end of the 20th century. I think
you're right.
I think the 20th. So small, nuanced detail, but okay. I don't even know what the point is of that. We can argue about
she's saving
all that
face.
stuff.
I mean, that's what it is.
You still got beat, and we don't elect based on the popular vote.
She's just trying to save face. Well, she lost. That's the crazy thing is that she lost a popular vote and the Electoral College, obviously.
Well, that's why she's not the president.
Hillary won at least she won the popular vote.
She won the popular vote, lost the Electoral College. Absolutely right. And that was in the 2016 election. She won the popular vote by about 3 million, as I recall.
I'm interested to see how she handles, and she didn't handle it very well. It's a longer clip, and we might play it for you later. But I'm interested to see how she handles the Pete Buttigieg question, because that seems to be something that the left is kind of going after her about, is that she didn't select him because he's gay. And in her book, her statement is, well, the country wasn't ready for that.
Whatever that means.
Whatever that means. So she picks Tim Walz instead.
Was the country ready for that? He was terrible. I mean, so you had the double whammy of two terrible candidates between her and him, I should say. He was terrible.
What's crazy to me is she didn't pick Mark Kelly because she was afraid that he had not gone through any kind of public scandal, anything that would put him in the limelight.
Yeah.
And she was afraid of his military record, which is immaculate, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
She picks Tim Walz, who has a little bit more question marks on that.
He's terrible. Tampon Tim, as they call him. So, I mean, that did him in right off the bat. Her best pick would have been Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. But you wonder if the Democrats' propensity for anti-Semitism played a role in that, he being a Jewish man. Honestly, the first time, I ever heard a speech delivered by him, and I said this on the show here, but before a running mate was selected, honestly, that I thought he was pretty good. I don't agree with his policies, but just in terms of his charisma, his communication skills, his popularity in a key swing state, that could have changed the outcome, honestly.
The first time I heard him speak was after the assassination attempt on President Trump.
Yeah. In his state,
July.
Of course.
Yeah, in his state, in Butler, Pennsylvania. And I thought he was awesome. And to me, there was two choices. It was Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona, who had, great military record, astronaut, very kind of moderate, I would say. And then Josh Shapiro, and she goes out and picks just this
Tim Walz. In a state you were going to win anyhow. Think about that.
Sense.
It makes none. I really think that it's terrible that they were concerned. So you're back to this picking individuals based on these physical characteristics or not picking them. In the case of Buttigieg, because he's a gay man. And in the case of Shapiro, because he's Jew. Now, this coming from the party who lectures us all the time about being biased and racist and misogynist and all the isms and the X-isms, and I can't even think of all of them anymore that they accuse us of. So that just doesn't make any sense to me. In a state, again, the most key of all swing states because it carries the most electoral votes, that being the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, where all the polls showed him to be wildly popular.
Absolutely.
By the way, in that state. Kelly would have been a safe pick, certainly better than Walz.
But another swing state.
Another swing state, not as many, half as many electoral votes.
Yeah.
Doesn't possess the charisma that Shapiro does, who's a rising star in the Democrat Party. Again, I don't agree with his policies. I'm just talking about his personality and his communication skills and his presence. It's pretty strong. You really can't deny that, and the Republicans would do well to be ready for that. Christopher Green, Assistant Director, Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society at Ohio State, is next.
From the Seabrook.com.
Adoring fans,
It's time for Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We welcome now Christopher Green, Assistant Director, Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society, The Ohio State University. Professor, good to see you again, sir. Thanks for coming on. All right, I think we're trying to get all the audio.
He muted his mic. Row.
Yeah, I think he's muted, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You go talk to him, try to get him going there? Okay. So we'll get the professor back here as soon as we can. Get that discussion going. So, a lot of other stuff going on here on the C Spire text line. Darren in Jackson says, Kimmel says how sexist and misogynistic Trump is. Have you ever seen The Man Show with Jimmy Kimmel? Pot, meat, kettle, huh? Darren, crazy. Let's see here. If they thought the ratings were bad before, just wait. No way his ratings improve with all the affiliates that still won't be carrying him, says Robert and Brandon. Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, as Will pointed out, one of the biggest, if not their largest affiliate, ABC's largest affiliate, Sinclair, said, yeah, we're not going to air it. So right off the bat, you would think that would have a negative impact on the ratings because you can't even get the show in those markets. So that's a huge problem. Kimmel was intoxicated with glee upon hearing from a bad source that the assassin was MAGA and way too eager to spread it on the C Spire text line. Yeah, it's the jackpot for the left, man. I agree. They live for those scenarios. It's just like to fuel their big time lean into race in this country. Anytime there's an event, an incident involving an officer and a perpetrator, they always hope for, seem to be ready to celebrate the idea that it's a white male officer and a black person who received some sort of treatment by the officer that they deemed to be police brutality or rooted in racism, stuff like that. They live for that stuff, man. It's incredible. They celebrate it, which is sick. All right, we got the professor now. All right, Professor, you there?
I'm here. I've been here. I
Okay.
just haven't been audible.
We think we got that figured out. So we wanted to have you on to talk about all these various terminations and cancellations going on since this assassination of Charlie Kirk. Many organizations are taking action. You've seen it, the private sector, the public sector, really across the board, not unique to any industry or any discipline. And the reason given by these organizations, by the employers, is that, well, you've said something that was inappropriate, that was just insensitive and harmful, and therefore you got to go. Help us understand the law on this particular issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, with the Jimmy Kimmel stuff, I mean, the first thing to remember is, of course, he's not being employed by the government, and he's not directly being told by the government that it is illegal to say the things that he has said. So there are two aspects, two interesting aspects. So first of all, ABC, they are entitled to look at his show, look at the numbers of people advertising. So I don't know if you watched the monologue in detail. The thing about his show, he really kind of treats anything that Trump is doing as just in itself worthy of laughing at. So it's almost like he's not making jokes. He just says, well, Trump did this, and everybody just is assumed like you're supposed to laugh at it. So it's a certain kind of group experience of comedy that, ABC is perfectly within the right to say, like, yeah, this kind of edgy, political, in-crowd, wink and nod type stuff isn't really, making people want to buy potato chips like we need to keep you on the air. And like you were saying, he had this kind of really sort of bonkers excitement about the idea that it was a right winger or a Trump fan who had killed Kirk, which is odd. I mean, just very odd. But then, okay, so ABC, they operate under a license from the FCC. So we got these old precedents that say when the FCC makes decisions about who it gives the license to, it has a little more leeway.
Yeah.
Because the airwaves are scarce, they have a little more leeway to decide whether to do that relative to when they're doing just straight up regulation. You said X, we're going to punish you. But those precedents actually, they're kind of old. The main precedent on the First Amendment question, this Red Lion case from 1969, there's been a lot of people questioning it in terms of modern technology. Is airspace as scarce in a way that justifies a more lenient approach to something that looks a little more like censorship? Independent of that, then there's the government employees, right? So Ole Miss had an employee who got sacked for saying positive, or well, I can't remember quite what it was. It was retweeting something that was something like dancing on Kirk's grave.
Yeah.
There actually was a 1987 case at the U.S. Supreme Court in a very similar posture. So this was somebody who had a non-public-facing public job with the government, who, when President Reagan was shot, said, well, next time I hope they get him. And the people, I think it was in, I can't remember where exactly it was, but the people said, oh, this isn't the kind of person we want working for our police department, I think it was. And they sacked her, but then the Supreme Court said, well, this isn't sufficiently job related to be able to fire somebody just because you don't like their politics. And, there's a lot of criticisms could be made for the way that the government has regulated government employee speech lately. But it is very interesting that firing people for expressing kind of really offensive thoughts after somebody gets shot it's something that happened 50 years ago as well as last week.
So why do you need a reason, Professor? Because I know in my company, working with our labor attorneys, we did require contracts with all of our employees, but it was very clear up front when you entered into that agreement to work at the company that it was totally discretionary on both the part of the employer and the employee. You can come to work here, yes or no, and we can let you go for no or any reason or no reason whatsoever, and you can leave for any or no reason whatsoever. We don't need a reason. But all this, right?
So this is the kind of thinking that people, a lot of kind of tough-minded business folks, reaction they have to these cases, these Pickering cases. So there's a case called Pickering from 1968, Connick. This was involved Harry Connick Sr. in 1983. And since then, the Supreme Court has said, look, if you're a public employee, if you're talking, and it's actually been limited to stuff that's not in the scope of your employment. If you're just talking politics, government can't just fire you. They have to come up with a reason. And, so you might think, well, my goodness, somebody who says really offensive things about President Reagan getting shot or Kurt getting assassinated, they're pretty likely to have goofy conversations about other stuff too. Just like not likely. You could just kind of get a bad vibe about the office atmosphere when you got people like that. That's not good enough, according to the Supreme Court's interpretation of the First Amendment. And there's, I think a very strong scholarly argument that, well, the 14th Amendment doesn't cover the right to public employment at all. It doesn't cover voting. It doesn't cover any political rights. So if you went with the original meaning of the 14th Amendment, it would, the government really wouldn't be restricted if you're not talking about the civil rights of the citizenry as such. If you're just talking about public employees, you'd have a lot more space for the government. But that hasn't been the rule since at least 1968. That Pickering wasn't the first precedent where the Supreme Court has said things like this. So it's been a very murky balancing test for 50 years, really, since 68, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. The scholarly criticisms have been mounting, so it's possible they'll come in and give government a lot more room to kind of get impolite or outrageous people out of their workplace, but don't count on that anytime soon. Okay,
we got a break right now, but if you can hang on, I want you to come back because I want to make sure I understand that what I think you're saying, that there's a somewhat of a distinction between public sector employment and private sector employment. Is what I heard there.
That's right. That's right. We can talk about that in a minute.
Sounds good. We got Professor Christopher Green on the line. We're coming right back.
Patriotism is a law.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Back with you in the Element Wealth studio, Professor Christopher Green from the Ohio State University, our guest. All right, so, Professor, before we went to break, apparently there is a distinction, right, between public sector employment, private sector employment, with respect to, I guess, the criteria, the gates that have to be jumped through in order to terminate an employee.
That's right. That's right. So according to the Supreme Court, you can't just fire people from public employment based on their politics. For private employees, of course, you've got lots of statutes that say you can't fire people for certain reasons, and in some states, they actually include politics. So in some states, like I think California includes this, and some others, they say, yeah, the fact that somebody has politics different from you, even if you're just running a grocery store, you aren't allowed to have a Democrats only grocery store, but you're certainly not allowed to have a Democrats only department of government. At least to the extent that you're talking about stuff that isn't directly in your job portfolio. Of course, the governor's office
sure.
can have his Republicans only. That's sort of what it means to be a Republican if you're in public office. But when you're talking about government employees, there's long been this line saying if you're doing stuff, if there's no disruption to the provision of the services from those political views, so that speech that you're engaged in, they're not allowed to fire you.
Okay. So bottom line is, if you go out and say dumb things, essentially, as long as you're still able to perform your duties satisfactorily, you're protected in that regard.
Yeah, but, of course, to the extent your job involves talking to the public, right? So Ole Miss wants to have to look like they're not filled with nutty folks. It's highly, it really causes, when somebody gets killed on a college campus during an event, and somebody in somebody's office says, "Hell yeah." Well, my goodness. I mean, Ole Miss they've got a history here, and people have, in fact, been shot on our campus for having the wrong views. And, I think it's not at all obvious that it doesn't have anything to do with your job. It's not perfectly obvious that it does. So, it's the kind of thing that's fodder for the lawsuits. And But, the governments generally are allowed to have policies to improve the efficiency of the provision of their services. And then sometimes that means taking account of people's speech. If ABC were a governmental thing, there's no question they could say, look, you're making people upset with this politics. I don't care if you do have a free speech right. You can, go buy your own megaphone, buy your, build yourself your own network, and you can do your thing if it's a private thing, and if you can get the air license. The FCC, the way that they've responded has not been, I think, perfect. Some of the stuff that the Attorney General has said about hate speech, Charlie Kirk, I think would be horrified at. I mean, there are lots of clips of him saying, like, no, that's not an exception. Because people, just the emotion that you attribute to people you disagree with is absolutely not a ground for restricting their speech. And so I really have been heartened at the number of people who have been going back to Charlie Kirk's own work on precisely this issue and saying, no, this is absolutely not the time to be saying that an expression of untoward opinion about the man himself is a reason to restrict his speech. He would I think would be utterly appalled at that.
Of course, that's a different matter than when the DOJ gets in, when the Attorney General's saying, okay, yeah, if you engage in hate speech, we're coming after you there. That's kind of scary. I mean, that should be protected. I guess, Professor, help us understand, we got a little time left, where the line is drawn. If I make some sort of statement that's inciting or threatening in nature, that wouldn't be protected, correct?
Right. So true threats, there's a whole series. If you look at First Amendment free speech law, there's a whole series of things that you are allowed to restrict, and one of them is true threats. One of the big cases actually involved it was Medgar Evers' brother. He was leading a boycott, and he said some things that were pretty spicy, and got a judgment against him. Supreme Court said, if you're not literally saying we're going to wring people's necks, metaphorically saying you're going to wring people's necks is protected speech. Yeah. There's a lot of questions about when has this metaphor become too serious? And I mean, it's the same thing we've been discussing last week. This language about words being violence. I think it really is dangerous rhetoric because some people do take it seriously. And
Absolutely.
Think, I guess we can use self-defense like it's actual violence, and that is. I mean, it's a real problem with how we think about civil discourse today.
Appreciate it, Professor. Always good talking to you, sir. Take care. Thanks.
Take care. God bless you.
You bet. We're coming right back after Fox News and Super Talk News. Stay with us. The hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays. We are live in the Element Wealth studio. We welcome now Paige Roberts, President and CEO, Jackson County Chamber of Commerce, an opinion column contributor at SuperTalk Mississippi News. Hey, Paige, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Gerard.
So, September, Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. This is a much bigger problem in our state and in our country than I think the average person knows, Paige. What about that?
Oh, I think so. I think we have a mental health crisis that our country is enduring right now. And it's very scary because it's everyone from young people up to older people and everyone in between. And it's something that we really need to take a breath, literally and figuratively, take a deep breath and consider our own emotional well-being.
Yeah. Well, so what should we be doing about it? Like, how does the average person know, or what are the warning signs that we should be looking for that perhaps someone is even having these terrible thoughts about taking their own life?
Well, Gerard, I am not a therapist of any kind. I do not have a degree in psychology. I have received a lot of therapy, and I do a lot of work with the Hope Squad, which is a nationwide suicide prevention program in schools that we have implemented here in Jackson County. And I think one of the things that I have learned is just being very in tune with your loved ones, especially in the case of teenagers, because we know their brains and their hormones are all scrambled in this time of their lives, and their brains aren't even fully developed, and they're undergoing a lot of pressure. And just being tuned in to changes in their behavior, changes in their attitudes and in their activities, and to really have good conversations and not just say, oh, how are you, and not really care what the answer is.
Yeah. What are you guys doing in Jackson County there? Anything in particular that the chamber is taking up on this issue?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, Hope Squad is a nationwide program. It's 20 years old in more than 2,000 schools across the country. 14 of those schools are the middle and high schools all across Jackson County. We have 7 middle schools and 7 high schools. It is a peer-to-peer program where the young people are connectors. They are not counselors, but they are connectors. Because the research is very clear that teenagers are much more often to go to their friends and to their peers with feelings of self-harm. And then the Hope Squad kids can get them connected to a trusted adult. For the adults, our chamber hosts a couple learning summits a year, and we have a local psychologist, Dr. Lisa Audemont, who does these summits or workshops on things like our sleep habits, because our sleep habits are tied to both our productivity at work and our emotional well-being. She does breathing techniques, ways to handle conflict resolution and build resiliency. All of these things, when we work on them, all come together to make healthier emotional states of well-being.
You know, I got to tell you, Paige, this seems a little perhaps out of the scope of a chamber of commerce, but I applaud you guys for it. What precipitated it? What made the Chamber of Commerce to take this up as a matter they wanted to be more involved in?
Well, we have an education and workforce development committee that hosts an education business summit once or sometimes twice a year. And last year we brought together the educators, including guidance counselors, behavior specialists, and administrators, along with the HR directors of our business members, such as Chevron, Ingalls, Mississippi Power, the health system, and even small business HR directors, and we asked them to describe what the mental health arena looked like for them. And the Venn diagram, the part in the middle that overlapped so glaringly, was the lack of ability to resolve conflict in a healthy and low resiliency, the inability to just pick yourself up and keep going, or what's the saying, let water off a duck's back. And people they're hypersensitive, they're taking things hard, and they're not giving it up, or again, just sort of breathing through it. And when we saw that these issues were happening in our schools and in our places of business, when we know that also the families in our schools are the employees for our businesses, then we know we have an issue that's affecting workplace, which is tied to her. So it is in a chamber's purview, actually, to help us improve the quality of life for our workforce.
Sure. Absolutely. So you named so many great companies there in the Jackson County and the Gulf Coast area. HR professionals, are they receiving, to your knowledge, the sort of training they need, again, to indicate or detect indications that someone may be struggling with their mental health situation and perhaps approach them on that?
I do know that the HR directors we interact with are very good about looking at what the performance levels are in their workers and how that may be tied to emotional well-being. And they're doing everything they can to try, from an EAP, which you know is an employee assistance program, to providing that, to Several of them have hired Dr. Audemont, who we have used for our summits, our workshops rather, and they've hired Dr. Audemont to do workshops for their employees. I think that more and more employers are realizing how hard life is on their people and how what happens outside of work affects what happens inside of work. And we can't just departmentalize everything so that we're not recognizing the value in uplifting the whole being.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly important because you can't just turn it off and on when you move from your life external to work to your life inside work. And I know as an employer that you could always tell if someone's performance was perhaps lacking and declining, that usually it was a result of having problems outside of work, in the house with family members, etc. Not their personal problems.
And a lot of our workers, Gerard, are sandwiched between who need them. They have who need them in a variety of ways, depending on the age, but they're dealing with issues with their children, and then they're dealing with their aging parents. Yeah. And that, all of that can be just exhausting, as our lives are exhausting. I mean, Gerard, as well as anybody, the news that we have been watching in just, say, the past 72 hours here on the coast, in different places in the state, whether you are pointing the gun towards yourself or towards someone else, it is most likely coming from an original point of view.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to address.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Paige, appreciate you coming on and talking about this very important issue to Mississippians and to all Americans. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
That's Paige Roberts, President and CEO of the Jackson County Chamber of Commerce, also an opinion column contributor at SuperTalk Mississippi News, talking about September being Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On Super Talk Mississippi.
You better call the sledgehammer. Put your mind at rest. I'm gonna be the sledgehammer.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. The president is in New York addressing the United Nations.
Had some
there.
issues.
Yeah, on the elevator. Tell the folks about that.
The elevator didn't work, and then his teleprompter didn't work. And, of course, he called today. He said, my teleprompter's not working. This kind of shows you where the UN is.
Yeah, he kind of made light of it. It was pretty funny, honestly. But he's at the United Nations talking about funding cuts for a lot of these foreign countries, and man, I tell you, he scolded those in attendance about having these wide open borders. Says illegal immigration is ruining your country. I mean, he took them to task now, and of course, he boasted about how he has effectively reduced immigration in this country down to zero, which is basically true. I mean, it's not too long ago, Will, as I've talked to Rhino many times, I remember sitting in this studio with the news, the business channel on, and there would be video showing the border and just these caravans of people, illegals, streaming across it as far as you could see from the camera. And that's not happening anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just been totally eliminated just by enforcing existing law. I mean, it wasn't that hard. And that's and he kept saying that during the campaign. We don't. The Democrats would say, well, the Republicans won't help us pass law that would curb illegal immigration, and that was, remember, Senator Langford from the Republican from Oklahoma's law, which would have had a quota. Remember that?
Yeah.
Which is effectively saying, yeah, we're going to let so many in, but once we hit that number, we'll sort of do a pause, and then we'll get it back going. That's not shutting the border down, and, of course, that legislation failed, and the Democrats contended, well, it's the Republicans that are standing in the way of securing the border. They won't pass this law. And the fact that they supported it meant it really didn't do anything. But the president said, we don't need any new laws. We need a new president to enforce the existing law. Turns out he was right. Yeah. So I would say at this point in his short tenure as president, that's the biggest accomplishment, honestly. It doesn't even come up. It was a subject every day, right? We're still, of course, dealing with unfortunate situations where illegals in this country commit crime, often heinous crime such as homicide, and it's just unacceptable. Hadn't happened in a while, though. Let's be honest about that. And, of course, the number that have been deported and the number who have been turned around seeking asylum is significant. So that problem is under control, I think it's fair to say. But he's warning these other countries, and there's no doubt that France, not Italy, the UK, England in particular, have been invaded. Now, Germany, you've seen this. They've done an about-face. They've pivoted. They've figured it out. Yeah, this is hurting our economy, and it's causing problems for just our society overall in general, and we're going to change our policies there. So, and he pointed that out this morning, that Germany has pivoted, and he praised that as a good thing, and he recommended to these other countries that you need to follow the lead of Germany here.
Yeah. Let's take you to New York and see what the president had to say.
Yeah.
He's never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the two things I got from the United Nations: a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, that is so great. Yeah. He just can't make it up, can you? It's so good.
Oh man, that's funny.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you found that.
Yeah, he went on to say that being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. I don't think he's wrong there.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
he's got a point.
He also he really called out those countries who are still buying oil from Russia because that's where they get the money to fight the war in Ukraine. And he of course he blasted both sides for continuing to escalate the war. And he talked about the many conflicts across the world that he inserted himself in to end, and in fact several in Africa and so forth. So he also said that we will provide the world with affordable energy, of course, relaxing regulations. What he means by that, relaxing regulations on fossil fuels so that we can leverage the abundance that sits underneath our feet of fossil fuels. But also, he's big time embraced nuclear power. And every day it seems like, well, there are new reports about investments in nuclear energy and expansion of the nuclear energy footprint in this country. We've got to win the war against the Chinese in quantum computing. And, of course, that also fueling artificial intelligence. But the reality is, as we all know, energy is needed. Power is needed for that revolution. And so rather than just saying, hey, let's just quit all of our innovation in quantum computing and artificial intelligence and all the investments in the development going on, no, the solution is let's figure out how we can produce more power to ensure that we remain superior with respect to artificial intelligence and quantum computing. It's a big deal, and it's critical to, honestly, our national security. And speaking of which, not sure if you guys saw this story, but I've thought for some time that the risk of cyber attacks is the number one threat to this country. Doesn't get the attention I think it needs, and that transcends many different areas where cyber attacks could cause lots of harm in this country. Well, the Secret Service was reported this morning dismantled a telecommunications network threatening the president in New York.
Yes, they basically... the only way I can describe it is a whole bunch of cell phones.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the pictures, but it's just a whole bunch of cell phones. It looked like they were doing some sort of network jamming or something like that, but very nefarious. So that because they're meeting at the UN in New York, that happened. Did you see what happened with the French president, Macron?
Didn't. What's up with that?
He got stopped by the police.
Oh, okay.
The New York PD stopped him. Okay, I'm reading from the New York Post here. French leader Emmanuel Macron got an authentic New York experience when his car was blocked by UN traffic.
Wow.
With the head of state filmed getting out of the car and even calling President Trump he had to personally call the president, say, hey, the cops won't let me go.
Golly.
So the NYPD's busy. They've got Macron there, and then they're busting this network jamming thing, which is
it's SIM cards.
SIM
it's the
cards,
old SIM cards.
yeah.
300 SIM servers, 100,000 SIM cards across 5 sites. This is according to the Secret Service. These could have been used to send anonymous, threatening text messages, but the bigger concern is their ability and their intentional use of disabling cell towers and then facilitating encrypted communications between criminal actors. That's a huge concern. So this could disrupt our country in a big sort of way. You just can't overstate the threat of this sort of technology falling into the hands of nefarious actors with the intention of inflicting massive harm on this country. So kudos to the Secret Service for discovering this and taking appropriate action. But this ain't the last we'll see of this. This is going to continue. And again, this is why it's so important for us to develop quantum computing and cybersecurity technology. And if China beats us in the race for superiority and development of quantum computing, the fear is, of course, they could use that technology to break through and decrypt all the encryption technology that protects the nation's various assets, from our Department of Defense and our weaponry to the very power and water we consume for everyday life, our banking systems, our voting systems, all the above. They figure out a way to break through all those cyber protections. Game over. The only way to prevent that is with more superior quantum computing. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com, digital.com to get started today.
It is on SuperTalk Mississippi.
A little rush bumping us into this segment here of Middays. We're coming at you from the Element Wealth studio. Are you thinking about or planning for a retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. Middays with me and Sports Talk Mississippi will be live in New Albany, Mississippi to kick off the Tallahatchie River Festival tomorrow. The Tallahatchie River Fest is presented by BNB Bank, Ace Fiber, and Renaissance Bank. For more info, go to newalbanymainstreet.com. This project is partially funded by a grant through Visit Mississippi. So if you're in the area tomorrow, folks, come by and see us. We'll be in New Albany for the Tallahatchie River Fest. New Albany, a great Mississippi city.
And a growing Mississippi city.
Sure is. Doing real well.
I was there probably about a month ago, 2 months ago, something like that. And, I mean, I remember New Albany before Toyota, and now you see after Toyota and the tremendous growth in that community.
Talking about up in the Blue Mountain?
Blue Mountain, but New Albany, a lot of the people that work there live there in New Albany, and it's amazing how much that town has grown.
Sure. Great downtown, great schools, great health care, hospital, local hospital, I'm sure we'll be talking to, among many of the, of course, New Albany leaders and folks involved with the Tallahatchie Festival. Representative, I think, Sam Creekmore from New Albany will be on the program. He, of course, heads the Public Health Committee in the not in the United States House, in the Mississippi House of Representatives. So you were talking earlier about Kamala Harris, and she, of course, has chronicled her most of her career, but I think more focus on the presidential election in her book. What's it called? 107 Days?
Yeah, 100 and some odd days.
Yeah. And she says that the decision to leave Biden's re-election up to him exclusively and his family was reckless. She wrote that the stakes, of course, it's a presidential election, were too high for such a personal decision, really, which was influenced, she says, by, this is rich now, ego and ambition. That coming from a career politician. Are you kidding me?
The major theme of the book, from the excerpts that I've read and seen, is I didn't fail. You failed me.
Yeah.
That's the major theme of the book is, it would have been great, but the American people weren't ready for it. The American people didn't want that. I didn't fail. You failed.
Yeah. She said that in retrospect, maybe she should have distanced herself more from the president, that she knew privately he had cognitive problems, but just was afraid of pointing that out for fear that it would project that she's got political ambition. So what a mess the whole deal was, man, at the end of the day. Somebody should have said something to Joe Biden early on. I think there's no doubt. But where the ego was his wife, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe it was Dr. Jill Biden that wanted to hang around there as the first lady, and many believe that she was a strong influence on Joe.
She was conducting cabinet meetings.
It's incredible to think about this country being operated under those circumstances. It's kind of scary. On the C Spire text line, by the way, that's 601-879-4395. Kimmel was intoxicated with glee upon hearing from a bad source that the assassin was MAGA and way too eager to spread it. Well, I think I may have shared that earlier in the program, but I honestly do think that the folks on the left, they thrive on these negative situations, such as an assassination, when the facts reveal ultimately that the bad person, that the perpetrator fit the right leaning profile. They just hope for that.
Yeah.
They celebrate it to some extent, and I pointed out that perhaps the most prominent example is one involving a police officer and someone involved with the police officer that's engaged in alleged criminal activity, but they hope so desperately that the profile of the officer is one of being a white male, preferably a MAGA or a right-leaning male, and that the person that was dealing with the police officer receiving whatever action was on the part of the police officer is a black person, is a minority. That's what they hope for, because they feel like that sort of fuels and powers their agenda, which is one that is completely immersed in race and climate change and radical gender ideology. Yeah. Does it seem weird, though, that this gender thing, which is really taken hold the last 3 to 4 years? I mean, I don't remember the rest of my life having so many discussions, so many reports, so much just publicity around this transgender stuff. It just seems to have swept the nation, and how much that's figured into the political violence in our country. And I would also say just the conflict and the negative discourse in our country, but between, I guess, political views. Just seems like that this radical gender stuff is at the heart of that. And if you go out just in your basic use of social media, you can't avoid, Will, some video, some statement by some transgender person that just has this deep-seated hate for Charlie Kirk. I came across one. I was going to play it, but it was laced with F-bombs. I mean, they just can't speak for 2 minutes without, 40 F-bombs being included in whatever message they're trying to deliver. It's almost as if they're unhappy with their own life, and they're looking for a culprit, a scapegoat. Who can I blame it on?
I think getting back to politics, the politics of it, I think the Democrats viewed this as their moment to stand up, because typically the Democrats want to stand up for the little person, and, that's kind of their MO.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of wanted to do that, and they, in 2020, 2021, 2022, they pushed it down everybody's throats. And the media did the same thing. And they went overboard with it. And the regular average Joe American just was perplexed by it. And I think that they really overplayed their hand with it. And even Kamala Harris, in her new book, she says that she had doubts about it. Because the most effective ad of the 2024 campaign was that Trump ad that they played over and over and over again that said that that Kamala Harris supported, I can't remember the exact words of it, but Kamala Harris supported paying for prisoners to get transgender surgeries.
Yeah.
They played it over and over, and it
was wise.
It was wise to do that.
Because most people don't agree with that. I mean, the vast majority of people, including Democrats, don't think we ought to spend public money on that.
They're afraid to say anything because there is
I know.
a very vocal, what you're talking about, they're a very vocal group out there that will just attack you if you have any inclination to say, it's probably not right.
Well, I came across that. I subscribe to this service you're familiar with. It's called Grabian, and they scour the news the day before for video content, and that includes some social media stuff that may make the cut, if you will, of what they distribute. And that's where I found this one is this just really mad transgender person that just goes on this profane-laced tirade against Charlie Kirk. It's like, man, you just really seem like a person that's disturbed. That it's just you're bothered, you're unhappy with your overall life in general, and you're looking for somebody to blame it on. And I guess Charlie Kirk is kind of the most available, and the person you selected to take out all your angst on, and that's just unbelievable. This person describes himself as a transgender activist, said, F. Charlie Kirk, I hope he is first of many. That's how the video starts. How can you have such deep-seated hate? I just don't get it. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Up of Mississippi.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
So this transgender activist that felt the need to record this video, this profane-laced video, exhibiting deep hate for Charlie Kirk, said, people whose lives are causing death and harm to others, they effing deserve it. I hope he's the first of many. I just don't get it. There seems to be kind of something that's common to all of these people, and then I freely admit I don't know a lot of transgender people. I'm not sure if I know any personally that have actually gone through any sort of medical treatment to change their biological sex. But it sure does seem like there's an abundance of them that are just mad and maybe upset at their situation, maybe upset, and I think this has been proven. Rhino talked about that last week, that they sort of got coaxed into this at a young age of changing their sex, and then now as an adult, they're quite upset about it. They're sterilized. They've got these lingering medical problems, many of which are permanent in that they need you need treatment constantly just to keep everything intact. And so maybe that's at play here. I don't know. It's just amazing to me that you didn't hear anything about this until about 3 or 4 years ago. And I don't know what induced it, what was the catalyst for it. But somewhere along the line, after it took hold, it just seems like it swept the country. And next thing you know, we're having school board meetings where they're talking about guys, dudes in dresses, as Rhino says, that are in the locker rooms and playing on the sports teams, and parents going to address school boards and school boards not letting them really say their piece.
And if you think, well, that's a New York problem, that's a California problem, that's not a Mississippi problem, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, there's school boards that are dealing with it right now.
That's what I've heard. In this state, right?
In this state.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Absolutely, they are dealing with it. Because, think about the ramifications. Think about if a student decides, I'm going to change my pronouns. Well, now the teacher, what do?
Yeah.
That becomes a school policy, basically.
Well, I'm pretty sure, as I recall, I remember talking about this, there was legislation that would have required schools to inform parents. And there was a list of things that they would have to tell parents about. And one of those, of course, was if their child student requested to be referred to by a name that's not their name on their registration, and by the pronouns that don't correspond with the sex on their documents. And I even remember one of them was that made me laugh was if they believe that they are an extraterrestrial being. If they
all kinds of crazy
wanted
stuff.
to be considered an extraterrestrial being, you'd have to follow. But that legislation didn't pass. So I don't think we have laws in this state that require the teachers, the administrators, folks that work for the school to tell parents when their children are acting like this.
But this is not a faraway problem. This is a common occurrence. And I think it's going to become more common. I already know that it has.
Yeah.
It is going to become more common. It's in school boards across Mississippi and as well as every other state in the union are going to have to come up with policies to deal with this.
It's crazy.
And it's only going to increase.
Yeah, it's
the
crazy.
more you talk about something, the more it's in the news, the more you're seeing it on social media, the more it's going to happen.
It's I agree. It's sweeping the country. I guess some degree of comfort we can take is that when the president took office, he signed a bunch of executive orders that reversed all the orders that were signed by Joe Biden that, in fact, prioritized that and made that a centerpiece of policymaking, as it was put, in the agency level. And the president came out and eliminated all the DEI stuff and all the crazy gender stuff as well in the agencies, in that giant bureaucracy. So that, I think it's had an effect on the country, and that we reversed a lot of that. But still, you're right. This is happening down at the local level, the school board level, and there was also some funding attached, I believe, to schools. It went to schools that was attached to adherence to these policies, such as not allowing biological males to participate in sports that are created for biological females, and there's schools that are suing, so it's a back and forth on all that.
I think sports is where you really see it out in the public, but you remember, they're dealing with bathroom issues, stuff like that.
Bathrooms, locker rooms, absolutely.
All that stuff, and these school boards have to deal with.
Yeah, and remember, under Biden, Title IX was applicable to all those who just identified as a female as opposed to biological females, and this president reversed that as well. We got another hour of middays after Fox News and SuperTalk News.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Thanks so much for joining us. It's Hour 3, the afternoon portion of the program. You got Gerard and Will East in for Rhino today. The Dow has turned negative. It was up as much as 300 points earlier in the session. I don't know what spooked investors, but it has turned negative. Oil up today to $63 a barrel. Again, I think it's stuck in that $60 to $65 a barrel range rather indefinitely at this point. The Dow's just back and forth over the unchanged line. The NASDAQ now down 100 points. The 10-year Treasury really hasn't reacted the way I think many thought it would to the Fed's cutting the benchmark interest rate last week. It's about 4.1%. Your mortgages, automobile loans, other major purchases that are financed on credit are all tied to the 10-year Treasury. Really hadn't moved, hasn't responded, I think, in the way that many hoped it would. It's largely believed that we will see 2 more rate cuts before the end of the year, probably quarter-point cuts. I don't think much beyond that. The Fed not convinced that the inflation dragon has been slain at this point. I think it's fair to say. But what will probably prompt the Fed to cut rates is just a weakening labor market, not really where it was thought it would be. Unemployment hasn't ticked up significantly, but it's still a problem. And there are lots of indicators that suggest that the employment picture, the labor market, is going to continue to weaken. I did go back, just out of curiosity, Will, and research that bill I was talking about that did not pass here in Mississippi, and it was in the 24 regular session, HB 176. And this would have required the folks that work in schools, administrators, teachers, counselors, other folks that work in a school, a K through 12 school, to inform parents if their student wants to be identified by a pronoun or a gender that doesn't correspond with that under which they were registered. So you register as a male, but you show up at school and say, hey, look, my pronouns are she, her, or I want to be called Sally, not Sam, right?
Yeah.
Then you've got to tell the parent what's going on. I mean, that sounds like common sense to me. Parents have a right to know that. But I was right in that if the child identifies as an animal species or an extraterrestrial being or an inanimate object, that too would necessitate the school to call the parents and tell them, hey, look, your child thinks they're a green man from Mars or something like that.
I would hope that they would call.
Oh, man. But as it turns out, that thing died in committee. It didn't make it out of committee.
I wonder if that changes this next go round.
I don't know.
It's brought up again.
You would think so. Died in committee in March of 2024. Sponsors of that legislation, by the way, included two of my bandmates in the House band. Our bassist, Representative Chuck Blackwell, and also lead vocalist, background vocalist, and rhythm guitar player, Representative Dan Eubanks from DeSoto County. So, did not make it across the finish line. Now, as I recall, and this, I guess what I started talking about this is just thinking about the advent of all this gender craziness over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm pretty sure I'm right in that I think it's the state of California, and there may be some other states, that have legislation that is exactly opposite of this.
Yeah, so you cannot.
So that the child could disclose to a teacher, a counselor, an administrator, principal, what have you. Hey, even though my name is Sam, I really want to be Sue. And they couldn't call the parents. They're forbidden by law from calling the parents and saying, you got a problem here with your child who doesn't seem to want to be identified under the gender that they registered for the school, or their official documents, birth certificates,
I'm Marvin
etc.
the Martian.
Yeah, exactly. You can't tell them that.
Yeah, you can't.
Oh, my gosh. So, I mean, again, I'm just trying to understand how we got here. How did we get so dang upside down we're talking about it because it consumes so much of what's going on in our society today at the local level all the way up to the federal level?
It's a number of factors probably, but I think social media, obviously, people of that persuasion being more prominent than before.
I guess. I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. I think socially it's become more acceptable. That's another reason. And I think the Democrats did kind of jump on it, thinking it would be their next great cause.
They did. They leaned into it hard.
I
still believe to this day that was a huge factor in losing the presidential election. They just never would really come out and say, no, I don't think that boys should play against girls in sports. They just wouldn't come out and say it. And they lost a lot of traditional Democrats in that respect. And then you had Tim Walz, who, he just went leaned into that hard in the state of Minnesota, personally, as the governor of Minnesota. That's why he got the nickname Tampon Tim, because I think he was involved in pushing through law, right, that required literally the installation of tampons in middle schoolers' boys' bathrooms. I mean, that's insanity.
It is insane.
So I can't even comprehend that you'd go to school and have to deal with that kind of nonsense. But he leaned hard into that in his own state. I do think that was a huge factor. But I guess the other thing that got me talking about this was this situation between the assassin of Charlie Kirk and their significant other, I guess you could call him, a person that was going through the transgender treatment. Right now we have these text messages between them, and it seems like that played a huge role. Just this hate for him because he says, as we say on the program right now, we don't think that boys ought to be playing against girls in sports or using their bathrooms or locker rooms.
It was also revealed, I believe late last week, that the person who tried to kill Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
That's right. That came out as well, right?
Transgender person.
Right.
And that had not been revealed before.
That's right. And then we also had the school shooting in Nashville, right?
Christ Covenant, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I've seen lists. There are many others, and that's not to say that every such crime is committed by a transgender individual. But I dare say 5 years ago we wouldn't even have been talking about this. That's something happened, and I don't know exactly what it is. And as Rhino likes to say, we went from the old liberal philosophy of the 60s of live and let live to you must use my pronouns or else. And they do get hostile about it. And they have just ginned up this deep contempt and hate for anyone who disagrees. And in this case, to the point where it served as the catalyst for an assassin to take the life of Charlie Kirk. I mean, it's just incomprehensible in my view. Louis from the 662, this is just from our earlier discussion about all the lies that get told in the world of politics, but in particular on the left, said their electorate doesn't care if what they say is accurate as long as it fits the narrative and incites their voter base. Sure does seem like it. Also about Kamala Harris on the C Spire text line, her whole book tour is excuse-laden loser talk. Is it a requirement for politicians to have zero personal accountability? I guess we have that power at the ballot box, but I hear you. Philip in Walthall County says, not only did Kamala alienate gay voters, she put in writing, as we say in German. I don't know if I can read it there, Philip. Sie hat Ren Engine Nest Besitzen. I don't know what that means. Oh, boys. Oh, I see. She did a number 2 in her own nest is what that translates to in German. Yeah, it does seem like it. Yeah, Charles and Matheson just pointed out something you told us about, Will, that Nexstar announced they will not air Kimmel either. So it's Nexstar and Sinclair, and you were looking at the markets on the break.
65, 67 markets, and it's some big ones. It's New Orleans, it's St. Louis, it's Washington, D.C., it's Portland, it's Seattle. Those are some big markets that will not be airing Jimmy Kimmel, despite ABC reinstating him.
Well, that'll have an impact on the old ratings, that's for sure. Stay with us. We got more middays after this break.
Patriotism.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So don't forget the biggest party on the squares coming up before the LSU home game in Oxford this coming Friday. The doors open at 7. VIP happy hour kicks off with heavy hors d'oeuvres and live music from Stephen Pillow. Then at 8:30, the funk takes over. That's going to be at the Lyric in Oxford this Friday. It's going to be an old-fashioned hall party featuring the 9-piece funk powerhouse, 5-star Funk Lounge. Don't miss your chance. General admission and VIP tickets are still available. Again, it's 5-star Funk Lounge at the hall party this Friday at the Lyric, presented by Ratchet Entertainment and sponsored by SuperTalk Mississippi and, of course, the Grove Collective. All right, Gary in the Berg is looking for some Kinks music there.
All right. I love the Kinks.
Yeah, that's good group. Also, Gary reminds that Turning Point USA is, in fact, I think there's a story on our website about that, going to be at Ole Miss, keeping, I believe, the date.
They moved it up.
They moved it up. Okay.
Charlie Kirk was supposed to be at Ole Miss at the Pavilion on, I believe, October 29th.
Yep.
They have changed the date to September 30th, if I'm not mistaken. So that is next week.
Okay.
And the speaker will be, it's a young man. His name is Bryland. I have to look. Hollyhand, I believe his last name is.
I think that's right,
He's actually a student at Auburn.
Yeah.
But he's got a big following, apparently, very impressive. And a lot of people are saying he might be the
heir apparent.
The heir apparent.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of interviews with him. He's pretty sharp. I think I said Blue Mountain earlier when I was talking about the Toyota facility around New Albany. It's Blue Springs, so I apologize for that. Somebody pointed that out.
Well, there's a Blue Mountain. Isn't there a Blue Mountain College
there?
There
is. Yeah, there absolutely is. Yeah.
There's, by the way, I don't think there's a mountain in. I've been all over Union County. I don't believe there's a mountain that I'm aware of.
Yep. Happy conversation and debates happen about 1A and 2A because this means a balance is always being sought on the C Spire text line. Yeah, the key there being positive and respectful and courteous debates and conversations and discourse, and that's what Charlie Kirk honestly was a master of, is having those discussions with detractors, people who disagreed with him, and he was really good, at diffusing them, because many of them would come forward, and they were just angry, and they wanted to just go immediately into attack and assault mode, and he'd let them do that. And then he would, work with them and try to kind of talk them off the ledge a little bit and have a more productive conversation. That's the way it ought to be in this country. And I tell you that the sound we played of, I guess it was last week, that featured Rashida Tlaib and Congressman Byron Donalds from Florida, and that altercation, that yelling match they had there in the center of our government, just was disturbing to me. Yeah. It just shouldn't happen in this country. And she's, just a person who is always unhappy, always mad, always yelling. It just seems like that's the way they carry on. They conduct themselves. And that's just unacceptable, in my view, for someone who's serving the country, serving their district, their constituents in the United States House or Senate. You just got to rise up above that and have a more productive, more respectful, more courteous, amicable conversation. And she certainly is known for quite the opposite of that.
Again, I always go back to the fact that they don't debate or have these arguments, for lack of a better word, these discussions between people from other sides against each other, like what Charlie Kirk was doing, a left versus a right person. Used to in the media, that's what you would have. You would have a lot of news programs would just be a moderator and a person from the left and a person from the right, and they sit there and they talk about things, and at the end of it, they shake their hands and they go their opposite ways. But, you kind of get both sides of the conversation. It's become these silos.
Yeah.
MSNBC is not going to present a person from the right.
Right.
They're not going to do it. I will give Fox News and CNN to some degree now with Scott Jennings a little bit of credit. They will have people on from opposite viewpoints.
I agree.
And I I like that because you get to see kind of what the other side is feeling. But a lot of these politicians they're frankly afraid to go and have their viewpoints challenged. And somebody like Representative Tlaib won't do it. You know, you have to do it in the chambers of Congress because otherwise she's not going to – or if she does, it's going to develop into a shouting match where neither one, gets their viewpoint across.
Yeah.
Because I think her ideas would be defeated. I've always said that conservative radio, talk radio, leans conservative because if you talk about a viewpoint enough, the conservative opinion wins.
Yeah, no doubt.
Always believe that.
Yeah. Well, because it's grounded in facts and logic and support for the opinion, whereas most of what comes from the left is not. It's just something they want.
It falls apart the more you talk about it.
It does. I agree. And that's what Charlie was so good at, was just making those points and supporting his points with just rational thought and logic, whereas the person that was challenging him really couldn't, just kind of stopped. You're just a white supremacist. Well, what do you mean by that? Or you have white privilege. He would get challenged with that all the time. Well, what can I do that you can't? He would point that out. And they would just stutter, stumble. They really couldn't say anything.
And to me, that's the most powerful thing that you can do is have that conversation with somebody from an opposing viewpoint.
Totally agree.
And I think it changes their minds. I really do.
Well, unfortunately, that ain't happening enough on America's college campuses, and I consumed several reports this morning about just the happenings across many of America's institutions of higher learning where there are just still professors and administrators just making all these crazy statements about Charlie Kirk. Just can't let it die. There's a Columbia lecturer, this just got released this morning, that in the last couple of days called Charlie Kirk a dead Nazi. And that's something else I sure do wish we would do in this country, is just end this very casual and callous and reckless use of Nazi and fascist and Hitler and all that sort of stuff.
It devalues it.
It completely does. It diminishes what it really does mean to be a Nazi.
Yep.
And you can't help but, just based on history, know and understand that includes extermination of the Jewish people in order to achieve the goals of National Socialism, Nazism. That's what distinguishes it from fascism. It's got this racial component that it's acceptable in the Nazi doctrine, literally to just kill everybody that doesn't meet the standard, the profile of a white Aryan. That's what they wanted. They didn't try to hide that, and killed 6 million Jews in an attempt to accomplish that sort of perfect, pure kind of race that they dreamed of. No, who's doing that? Nobody. So this lecturer actually reposted a photo of a graffiti-covered wall in Los Angeles that read, 2 black men were lynched in the media is mourning a dead Nazi, referring to what's happening in Mississippi here.
Yeah.
What happened in Mississippi, which has been proven wrong, totally.
Yeah. Michael Knowles, who you've interviewed several times, of the Daily Wire, he is kind of taking up the mantle, and he is actually doing some speaking events on campuses across the U.S. for Turning Point USA. Well, tonight he is at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, I believe that's the university, and he is being protested, obviously. One of the persons tweeted tonight, UMN is hosting an event with Turning Point USA, a far-right conservative group founded by Charlie Kirk. This is an absurd decision, and it threatens the safety of our students and our community as a whole.
Oh, geez. I don't know, man. If we don't do something, and I don't know what that is, on our college campuses, at a minimum, we just need balance bad, because the pendulum is swung so far in the direction of these leftists, of these Marxists. They're all mad at themselves. They're all unhappy. They mire in negativity, and they think they're superior to everybody else. But I think they know in their heart they're really inferior, and I think that's why they're infected with this Marxism. I really do. But they're indoctrinating our young people. In fact, there's a recent poll about the rise in popularity of socialism I'll get to on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.
We interrupt this program. Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge news. Huge news.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Tim and McGee says, but the Democrats have doubled down on the transgender crap, haven't they? They have. I mean, it does appear to be the case, and I believe, Tim, that will cost them at the ballot box. Because poll after poll, Will, you've seen it, shows that vast majority of America, like it's an 80-20 issue, as it is referred to, right? Which means it's not just Republicans and folks on the right that think this is crazy. And you know why? Because there are parents, Democrat parents, right, that have girls in school, and they find themselves competing with boys because their idiotic school boards and those that run their educational institutions have leaned into this crap as well.
Yeah. Trump is so good at getting those 80-20 issues.
Agree.
And getting on the right side. You know, crime is another one.
Yeah.
This whole National Guard thing, I mean, I'm just convinced that is a ploy by President Trump to get these mayors of these big cities, usually Democrats, to get on, pick a side.
Yep.
And most of them have obviously gone against him. Governors as well, not just mayors, but gone against him. And, you know, said, no, everything's fine here. And then you see the murder rate skyrocketing. You know, I think Memphis is the only one.
Yeah.
Where the mayor said, we need all the help we can get.
Well, by the way, even Starbucks is in on the action. A customer ordered a Starbucks drink. This was in Ohio. And it happened to be, according to this particular article, it's Charlie Kirk's go-to Starbucks drink. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but apparently the person buying the coffee received it back with a negative message about Kirk on it. And what she put on it, racists that be possessive, racist favorite drink. Unbelievable. So Starbucks fired that particular individual for that insensitive comment. It was stupid is what it was. But, oh, boy, interesting.
How did they know that was his favorite drink?
I'm not exactly sure. I was trying to get to the bottom of that as well. I don't know.
You have to be careful nowadays. I mean, there was a lot of, in the immediate aftermath of him being assassinated, there was a lot of quotes going out, especially about like athletes and stuff that were fake.
Yeah.
They weren't real, and people were retweeting them and sharing them.
Yep.
All that kind of stuff. So who knows?
Yeah.
But
it's crazy. Now, I believe, of course, as I've said before, that Starbucks would have the right to fire that person for no reason whatsoever. That's my belief. And, of course, the professor tried to break that down for us. No, he didn't try. He did break down for us the distinction between public sector employment and private sector employment. You got a lot more latitude, obviously, in the private sector. But that's why we end up with these permanent employees in government. It's impossible to get rid of them. I mean, he shared that, what the courts have even ruled, how they've ruled on that situation in the past. So, with respect to this infatuation with socialism on America's college campuses, recent poll that was done by the Buckley Institute across, I think it was 1,000 students across America's various college campuses, shows that 40%. The question was, if you had to choose, which economic system would you prefer to live under? 40% said capitalism, 36% said socialism, and 24% unsure. That's just mind-boggling to me. So nearly half of the undergraduate students surveyed at these four-year colleges, nearly half, support socialism or support a system other than capitalism. They were also asked whether they agree with the statement, while socialist countries like Cuba and the Soviet Union have not been perfect, they offer a better economic model than capitalist countries like the United States. That's just incredible. You think that the economic model in Cuba is better than it is here? So I'm looking at a photo, and I can't tell exactly where this is, but it looks like it's in a downtown area, some downtown in this country. It might be New York. And it's a bunch of students, and they're all carrying signs, pre-printed signs, and all sorts of anti-Donald Trump signs. But these other signs are promoting socialism. And they've got this big banner, leading the group out in front that they're holding. Socialist students with like a graphic of a megaphone next to it. No future for capitalism, another banner reads. This is insane.
Yeah.
What do you go to college for? Why would you want to spend time and money in college if your fate's predetermined by socialism, by the government? That's what exactly it is. Why go to college? I know. I don't think they understand that. That's, as Rhino likes to say, the second-order thinking. Let's see. Andy in Tupelo says that wonderful conservative legislature we have talking about this bill that didn't pass, and I don't really know why it didn't. I don't know the reason why. This is the one that would require our K-12 schools to inform a parent if a student has requested to be identified by a gender other than the one they're registered under, or using different pronouns that don't correspond with their registration gender and their birth certificate, their other official documents. And then if they identify as an animal or an extraterrestrial being. Can you imagine dealing with that?
Again, it goes back to common sense, and that's what so many people in this country have lost, is just like sit down and go through common sense. Okay, my kid is identifying as an alien. They want to be addressed by some, Z-Zim or something like that.
Yep.
Maybe I should contact the parent.
It just makes sense to me. Let's see on the C Spire text line. So if you get a diploma, would it say he, them graduated? Oh, Karen in Oxford says the Biden regime gave a very public spotlight stage and forced the audience to mental illness. Giving up that spotlight is hard to do when you think you deserve more rights than the rest of us. I think that applies across the board in politics in general, Karen. I've believed for some time that it's not the so-called power, that it's the trappings, it's the attention, it's the spoils, it's the all sorts of preferential treatment one gets in this country at all levels of government once elected. And I think it's also to something you said, Will. We have so many media outlets and so many forms of exposure and reporting that just people like to see themselves in their name out there, and it just keeps them seeking political office indefinitely, interminably, it seems. And even when they get out, man, they jump right back into it, just can't stay away from it.
Yeah. It's its own industry, basically.
It's a drug, addicted to the drug of politics. Let's see on the C Spire text line here. At this point, many of these people making these these hatreds are just looking for attention. Yeah, agree. We were just talking about it. Just like the attention they crave by being transgender. I think there is a lot of truth to that. I really do. I agree with that.
I think a lot of people get radicalized online.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think that's what happened with the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk. I think he got radicalized online. I don't think it was from his family or anything like that. It's what influences you, and sometimes if you get online and you stay online, you know your worldview changes, and you think that something like this is acceptable, even admirable.
And
I think that's what happened to him.
Neil from Pontotoc says it's a mental health issue. Yeah, we totally agree. Talking about the gender dysphoria that should be treated with some sort of mental health care and treatment, other than let's go to the clinic or the hospital and start mutilating your genitals. Yeah, that's just a dumb thing to do. Johnny in West Point said Trump had the perfect opportunity to cool the rhetoric at Charlie Kirk's memorial, yet he chose to say, "I hate my enemies." As a conservative, I wish he hadn't done that. That will be used in the midterms and next presidential election. I agree with you, Johnny. I was disappointed in that and thought that was poor timing at a minimum. That was right after, of course, Charlie Kirk's wife, Erica, said that she forgave the person who assassinated her husband and the father of her children. Yeah, I think that's just Mr. Trump's personality. That's just his way. And I think it just as a timing was what bothered me more than anything. And he hasn't really said anything about that since then. We're coming right back with a final segment on Middays. Please stay with us.
Think for a moment about
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road, I've got a name. I've got a name. Like a singing bird.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays, final segment. Tomorrow, don't forget, we're up in New Albany, Mississippi for the Tallahatchie River Fest. We'll be there, and then the Sports Talk boys will also be present, broadcasting in New Albany as well for the Tallahatchie River Fest. Ben from Madison says big hearings involving school choice freedom this week in Jackson. Really hope the governor calls them in later this fall. I feel like a special session gives us the best chance to get these policies over the goal line. Yeah, I saw the speaker and the governor last night at a local event and didn't really talk about that. And I felt like, honestly, well, if I'd asked the governor, I'm not sure he would have told me. And I don't blame him. He shouldn't. You know, he should keep that close to the vest. I'm not sure what the plan is, but there are lots of rumblings about a possible special session.
Have we ever had two special sessions in 1 year?
No, I don't know. It's a good question. That's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. But might we get one for the purpose of passing school choice legislation? There are lots of objections to school choice that are largely myth. And I think it is incumbent upon us, I mean, I've talked about it a lot and will continue to do so, to debunk and refute much of what is put forward as objections to these policies. That's just simply not true. And so it makes sense, of course, to debate the merits of the school choice program or the drawbacks if you are opposed to school choice. But let's do so with the facts, like any issue that we debate. Let's make sure that we frame the argument with factual information and not just a bunch of fear-mongering hyperbole And that's just where we are now. You know, the parents' campaign, they are campaigning hard, as they have been for a long time, against education freedom in this state. They have, I believe, have been a significant influence on the lieutenant governor in that respect. I know that there's a relationship there. And the lieutenant governor is certainly no friend of school choice. He has indicated an inclination to give a little bit on that, on perhaps some open enrollment provisions that would allow the transfer from public school to another public school where the home school, the one assigned to the address of the student, could not block such a transfer. But he only is in favor of doing that on a restricted basis where D and F schools or districts. He's used them interchangeable, so I don't know where he stands, if he means an F or D rated. Actually, he said failing is the term he used the last time I interviewed him. I don't know if he means failing district or failing school. There is a distinction, of course. And, of course, that would also mean we only have 2, I think, presently that are in an F status. So that's not exactly a very robust move if we were to enact it on a limited basis. So we'll see. But I hear you, Ben. I'm ready to get something done on that as well, as the walls are closing in on us, as you know, with Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, and now Texas all having enacted robust school choice programs.
So Alabama's was just enacted, correct?
Like March or April of this year, I believe, recently. And, of course, this is something the president also would like to see happen across the nation, and that would include in our state. It would not surprise me. I have no indication or evidence of this. It's just an opinion. If the president doesn't weigh in on school choice here in Mississippi. You know, he's got a great relationship, for example, with our governor, with our former governor, Phil Bryant, both of whom are proponents of school choice programs. And, again, I wouldn't be shocked to see, as he is known for doing, the president, of speaking his mind, you know, where he thinks he can lend his support or opposition to something at even the state level.
If he was to come out and endorse it and back it, basically,
yep,
do you think that would push it over the line?
I go back and forth on that. We're talking about here in Mississippi. Yeah. I think that each representative and senator who currently opposes or perhaps is on the fence, I think would do some introspective thinking about how their vote would affect their prospects for re-election. You know, that's always at play.
Take a minute and cipher it, as my grandfather used to say.
And I'm not sure. They would probably do a little asking around, perhaps informal polling of their constituents. Hey, are you with the president here, or do you oppose school choice? That's kind of where we are. We're out here today in New Albany for the Tallahatchie Fest tomorrow. Join us then. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.